I funded a girl for 3 years, only to find out she got involved with my husband. For 3 years, I supported a girl who was always sweet and well-behaved, until one day, I accidentally saw her wearing my lace camisole in a seductive pose on my husband Derek's social media post, where I had been intentionally excluded. It was then I fully understood what it meant to live out the farmer and the snake in real life. 1. What do you think you're doing? The front door opened directly into the dining room, and the moment I walked in, I saw the scene unfold before me. Rachel was leaning forward, her pale arms extended toward Derek's mouth, her small lips parted in an exaggerated ah, as she lovingly fed him a spoonful of soup. Derek obediently leaned in, his eyes fixed on her, a foolish grin plastered across his face. My sudden return home startled both of them, and they quickly adjusted their postures, their panic flashing briefly in their eyes. This is Rachel's new recipe for cream of mushroom soup that she learned at a French restaurant. She wanted me to try it, Derek stammered. Yeah, Emily, you should try it too. It's delicious, Rachel chimed in, holding up the bowl and spoon with a wide-eyed, innocent smile, as if she were a pure, unblemished lily. No thanks. After a long night flight, I don't have much of an appetite. Derek, are your arms broken? Do you really need Rachel to feed you? I bent down to change my shoes, my tone deliberately casual, though my words wiped the smile off Derek's face. And Rachel, it's 70 degrees in here with the air conditioning on. Don't you feel cold dressed like that? I shot a glance at Rachel. She was wearing a pale yellow halter top and an ultra-short denim skirt, her youthful, girlish energy practically radiating from her clothes. But given that they were alone in the house together, her outfit was wildly inappropriate, to say the least. Rachel immediately crossed her arms over her chest and rubbed her arms as though she felt a chill. Oh no! The kitchen was so hot while I was cooking I didn't even notice. Now that you mention it, I am feeling a bit cold. Why don't you two eat first? I'll go grab a sweater, she mumbled, before scurrying off to her room. I held out my hand to Derek. Give me your phone. I need to send a file. Derek handed me his phone. As I walked to our bedroom, my anger simmered. Rachel had been growing increasingly presumptuous lately. 3 years ago, after I graduated from college, I wanted to do something meaningful. Rachel was the underprivileged girl I decided to sponsor. When she scored high enough on her exams to get into a decent college, I was overjoyed. I knew she planned to come to the city for a summer job after her exams, so I offered her free room and board during the summer. For her 18th birthday, I even gave her a gold bracelet as a gift. At first, she was diligent and considerate, taking over all the housework. She knew I was trying to conceive and would whip up nutritious meals for me, gently reminding me to take my prenatal vitamins every day. But over time, I began to notice certain things that didn't sit right. She started to flirt, intentionally or not, with Derek. For example, despite my repeated insistence that she didn't need to do our laundry, she continued to do so anyway. When she began earning some money, she started dressing up more, constantly parading in front of Derek in her new outfits, asking for his opinion. Why do you always ask for his opinion? I once questioned. She gave me a sugary smile and replied, Oh, Emily, you wouldn't understand. I'm dressing up to find a boyfriend. Of course I need a guy's opinion. Her reasoning sounded off, but I didn't push further. The worst incident occurred when Derek forgot to grab a change of clothes before his shower. I was a second too slow, and Rachel rushed to hand him his pajamas. Thankfully, Derek only stuck his arm out for them. Rachel's excuse? She didn't want him to catch a cold. Incidents like these became more frequent. Once or twice could be chalked up to innocent mistakes, but at some point, her intentions became impossible to ignore. I sighed, resolving to find the right moment to have a serious talk with her. Back in my room, I opened Derek's phone to switch accounts when a notification from his social media caught my eye. It was a comment from Margaret. "You're one lucky guy." She had even liked the post. Curious, I clicked on the post Derek had made 5 minutes earlier. "A peaceful Sunday night, thanks to Rachel," it read, accompanied by a photo of the cream of mushroom soup she had made. My brows furrowed. Then my attention drifted to the comment section, and suddenly, one particular reply jumped out at me. It was Rachel's comment, "Hee, thank you, Derek." Alarm bells went off in my head. I clicked onto her profile and scrolled through her feed until I found a post from the night before. The caption? Derek's comment, "Youth, you look great in anything." The photo? Rachel posing in front of my full-length mirror, wearing my red lace camisole, her lips painted a bold red, and her body angled provocatively to highlight her curves. I felt sick to my stomach. The most outrageous part? I had never even seen this post before. It had been hidden from me. 2. In an instant, I was furious. Her lack of boundaries was one thing, but to wear my intimate clothing, post a photo in it, block me from seeing it, and yet let my husband view it? Her intentions couldn't have been clearer. Without a second thought, I tapped on her profile picture and called her. Rachel initially thought it was Derek calling her. Her voice softened into a delicate whisper. "Hello? Derek, you don't need to comfort me. I'm fine," the words, squeezed out in a sugary tone, made it seem as though she had just suffered some colossal grievance. "Relax. Comforting you wasn't on my agenda. Come to my room right now. I have something to tell you." Without giving her a chance to respond, I hung up with a decisive click. Our home is a cozy 2-story duplex. Rachel stays in the guest room downstairs while Derek and I live upstairs. The walk from her room to mine would take half a minute at most, but she took her sweet time, nearly 10 minutes, before finally showing up. And she brought Derek with her. Looks like she spent that time downstairs venting to him about me, Emily. Before I had a chance to speak, Derek interjected first, attempting to mediate. "Rachel's just at that age where she loves dressing up. I mean, what 18-year-old girl doesn't care about fashion? Come on, don't be upset, okay?" As he spoke, he slid an arm around my shoulders. "Besides, it's my responsibility as her brother-in-law to guide her better. I let my guard down this time, but you shouldn't let it upset you. We're trying to have a baby, remember? Stress isn't good for you." "Oh, Derek," I said with a sardonic laugh. "You do remember you're her brother-in-law, don't you? You've really embraced this role, haven't you? Liking and commenting on your sister-in-laws. Revealing selfies? You even added a drooling emoji. What's next? Licking the screen." I tossed my phone at Derek, folding my arms as I gave him a cold glare. "And you, Rachel." I turned to her, my voice dripping with disdain. "Are you out of your mind? That outfit you wore is meant for me. It's private, and you know that. I've barely worn it myself, and here you are, strutting around in it for your social media audience, posing suggestively and even blocking me from seeing it. What are you trying to pull? Where's your decency, huh?" The fury I'd been bottling up finally erupted. I lashed out at Rachel, my voice cutting through the room like a whip. Both of them were stunned, their faces pale from the sudden confrontation. Rachel's eyes brimmed with tears, her lips trembling as if she wanted to speak but couldn't. Then something clicked in my mind. I narrowed my eyes at Rachel, stepping closer until our faces were inches apart. "Tell me, Rachel, was that post set to be visible to only one person?" A flicker of panic crossed her face, but she quickly masked it. "No, of course not, Emily. What are you talking about?" "I shouldn't have worn your clothes. That was wrong, okay? I'm sorry. Please don't be mad." "Hand it over," I demanded, growing tired of her excuses. I reached out and snatched her phone from her hand. This phone, by the way, was one I had bought for her 3 years ago. I even knew the passcode. It was my birthday. When I gifted her the phone back then, She had been so thrilled that she wiped her hands clean before touching it, afraid to smudge her precious gift. She had stared at the phone with wide, glittering eyes and whispered, "Emily, can you tell me your birthday? I want to use it as my passcode. I want to grow up to be just like you." But those once innocent, sparkling eyes were now tainted with deceit. I quickly entered my birthday. Wrong. I glanced back at Rachel. The panic from earlier had been replaced with an almost smug composure, as if daring me to figure it out. Her expression practically screamed, "What are you going to do about it?" Derek, sensing the tension, stepped in to grab my hand. "Emily, stop this. You're overthinking things." I wrenched my hand away from him, staring at Rachel's defiant face. After a few seconds of consideration, an idea struck me. With calm certainty, I entered Derek's birthday. Unlocked. Even Derek looked shocked. "Care to explain this?" I asked Rachel, holding up the unlocked phone in front of her. I was seconds away from opening her messaging app. Rachel's composure finally cracked. Her eyes darted around nervously, her expression pleading for help. Derek, clearly uncomfortable, stepped forward and snatched the phone from my hands, holding it out of reach. "That's enough, Emily. Stop making a scene. Rachel's just a kid. If she's made a mistake, you should talk to her calmly, not invade her privacy. Derek, don't you dare play the righteous hero with me." I snapped, my voice dripping with mockery. "You're suddenly the perfect brother-in-law? Where was all this talk about privacy when she was sneaking around in my private lingerie? Where was your moral high ground last night, huh? Should I get you a bib for all the drooling you did?" I folded my arms, laughing bitterly. "A kid? Please. She's 18, a grown woman who knows exactly what she's doing." I turned back to Rachel, locking eyes with her. "So, why did you set his birthday as your passcode?" "Emily, Rachel stammered, her fingers twisting the hem of her shirt. She couldn't even lift her head. "I just didn't want to forget his birthday." Her eyes welled up with tears, and she cast a helpless, doe-eyed glance at Derek, as if silently begging him to save her. I thought I might explode from rage. Her manipulative act was infuriating. "Rachel, are you obsessed with men or something?" I'd had enough. I lunged forward, grabbing a fistful of her hair and yanking her back. My hand shot up, ready to slap her across the face. Derek seized my wrist before I could land the blow. "Emily, have you lost your mind?" His other hand firmly pinched the webbing between my thumb and forefinger, forcing me to release Rachel's hair in pain. Derek seized the opportunity to push Rachel out of the room and shut the door behind her. "Derek, are you serious? You're pinching me for her, huh? Really?" I rubbed my hand in pain, tears welling up in my eyes as all the bottled-up grievances surged within me. Why? Why was it always me who had to endure and stay silent when it was the two of them overstepping boundaries? Why did I give so much for her, only for her to repay me with ingratitude? Why? Derek placed his hands on my shoulders, gently guiding me to sit on the bed. "Emily, calm down. Rachel's still just a kid. Even if she made a mistake, you shouldn't have laid hands on her. I admit I handled things poorly. I shouldn't have indulged her just because she's young. I should have pointed out her boundaries. I've clearly failed as her brother-in-law. If you're upset, take it out on me, hit me, yell at me. I was the one who handled things wrong." Anger surged within me as I stared at his earnest face. "Fine, I can't hit her, but can I at least kick her out? Or what? Have you already handed her the house and yourself? Should I be the one to leave?" Before I could finish, a knock came at the door. Rachel, now wearing different clothes, cautiously pushed the door ajar. "Emily, please don't be mad. I can leave if you want, just don't get yourself worked up. I only wanted to repay you both, but I don't have much to offer, so I thought I'd make you the best birthday cakes I could." I shot her a cold glare. "A calendar, a reminder app, an alarm clock, Any one of those could have reminded you of my birthday. Why did it have to be your lock screen password? Who are you trying to fool?" Rachel lowered her head, and to my surprise, she began to cry. "I'm sorry. It was thoughtless of me. I'm just so stupid. I only thought it'd help me remember. Thank you for taking care of me all this time. I've been such a burden to you." After she finished speaking, Rachel bowed deeply before turning and walking away without looking back. Watching her frail figure, I couldn't help but recall the skinny, malnourished little girl she used to be, fighting to survive. My heart softened, and despite myself, I called out, "Fine, just stay the few days you've got left until school starts. Stay out of trouble and don't make me regret this. It's not safe to be out at this hour. I don't want you coming to my house only to end up in some kind of trouble." Rachel's steps faltered for a moment, and she softly said, "Thank you." After finally cleaning up and lying in bed, I found myself unable to sleep. I thought back to the summer when I picked Rachel up from the train station. It had been 3 years since we last saw each other, and she had changed so much. Her skin was now fair, her frame tall and well-proportioned, nothing like the dark, frail girl I remembered. Back then, Rachel had just finished middle school. Even though she was about to start high school, her malnourished appearance made her look like she could collapse at any moment. Yet, she still had to sell vegetables to pay for her younger brother's tuition, just to earn a bite to eat. Rachel had 2 older sisters who had both dropped out of school early to marry, working hard labor jobs to make ends meet. Her mother had already mapped out her future, just like her sisters. Girls are going to get married sooner or later anyway. She might as well quit school early to help the family and save up for her brother's tuition. The first time I met her, she was carrying a basket of firewood on her back. Her clothes were patched all over, her hands scarred from work, and her eyes full of shyness. She told me she desperately wanted to stay in school. If not, her mother would marry her off to the mechanic from the next village, and she didn't want to live the same life her sisters had. Looking into her clear, bright eyes, I immediately decided to sponsor her high school and college education, on the condition that her family allowed her to focus on her studies. To ensure her mother didn't spend the money on her brother, I bought Rachel a phone so we could stay in touch. She often shared her school life with me and occasionally asked for some pocket money. When I found out her grades were good enough for a second-tier university, I felt genuinely happy for her. All her hard work had finally paid off, and she was free from that suffocating place. But now, I was confused. Was she still the same Rachel I knew 3 years ago? I thought about it over and over before eventually falling into a restless sleep. The next morning, I was jolted awake by Derek's phone call. My head was pounding, and I felt groggy. On the other end, Derek's voice was hurried. He said he'd forgotten to grab a tie in his rush to leave and had a meeting in 15 minutes. He needed me to bring him a navy blue tie right away. Half asleep, I dragged myself out of bed and rummaged through his collection until I found a navy blue one. Just as I was about to leave, my gaze drifted to his underwear drawer, and there it was. A glaring flash of red caught my eye. I froze, my mind instantly alert. It was. With a look of disgust, I picked it up by the edge with 2 fingers, a red, lacy women's thong. The underwear was still relatively conservative, but it was made entirely of transparent mesh fabric, with a fragile lace trim along the edges. A gentle tug would reduce it to a scrap of fabric. "This is not mine. I've never seen it before." I moved the item away from me, but even from a distance, the overpowering scent of cheap perfume assaulted my senses. The stench triggered a pounding headache, and the fury of betrayal surged straight to my head. I couldn't care less about the tie I had been looking for. With trembling hands, I grabbed my phone and dialed Derek on a video call. As soon as the call connected, I switched to the rear camera and pointed it at the offending item. "Derek, what is this? Are you cheating on me right under our roof? On the other end, Derek hurriedly ducked into the bathroom, shielding the screen with his hand. Emily, what are you talking about? Did you find the tie I asked for? Oh, you want to know what I'm talking about? This is what I found in your closet. Emily, calm down. I swear I have no idea why that's in my closet. Are you sure you're not mistaken? His earnest expression made me pause for a moment, but then another suspicion hit me, reigniting my rage so strongly I began to shake. Rachel! I ended the call abruptly and stormed downstairs with the offending item in hand. Just as I raised my fist to knock on her door, I overheard Rachel's voice from inside, purposefully hushed. I've been staying here for so long, and they won't even upgrade my phone. All I got was a bracelet, so stingy. I can't tell if she's genuinely clueless or just playing dumb. She yelled at me the other day just for wearing one of her dresses. You'd think it was made of gold or something. Listen, Vanessa, I want to milk more out of her too, but I have to wait for the right moment. Do you think this is like when I was getting those support checks and could go out drinking every weekend? Let me settle in first. Once I do, I'll say a few sweet things to her, and by then, her words struck me like a bomb, obliterating my last shred of self-control. My anger surged like wildfire, and I pounded on the door with all my might. Rachel, you ungrateful snake, get out here right now. Startled, Rachel fumbled to open the door. The moment she did, I grabbed her by the hair without a second thought and delivered the slaps I had restrained myself from throwing the day before. What was that trash you were just saying? Huh? Keep going, aren't you so good at running your mouth? Everything happened so fast that Rachel didn't even have time to react before I had her by the hair and slapped her several more times. Calling me stingy and clueless? Do you have any idea that without me you'd be married off already? Do you think you would have gotten into college without me? Do you think you'd be living in my house, seducing my husband without me? I shoved her onto the bed and threw the offensive item at her face. She pulled it off her face and finally realized what was happening. A vicious glint flashed in her eyes. Rachel began cursing, spewing filthy words, as she stood up to retaliate. But she was a head shorter than me, and I didn't give her a chance. I slapped her again before she could even raise her hand. She went berserk and started grappling with me, pushing me toward the vanity table. My lower back slammed into the edge of the vanity, and I collapsed to the floor. A bottle of perfume fell and shattered at my feet. It was that same cheap, nauseating perfume. Before I lost consciousness, that was the last thing I remembered. When I woke up, a doctor was holding an ultrasound chart, speaking to Derek. Given her condition, it's a miracle the baby is still safe. You'll need to be extra careful from now on. Avoid upsetting her, and don't let anything like this happen again. Understood. Thank you, doctor. Derek's face was lit with uncontrollable excitement. When he noticed I was awake, he rushed to my bedside and grabbed my hand. Emily, we're having a baby. He squeezed my hand tightly and kissed it passionately. While his face radiated joy, I felt absolutely no happiness about this child. Where's Rachel? She's at home cooking. She said she's making chicken soup to help you recover. Derek's expression grew more subdued when I mentioned Rachel. Do you know how I ended up in the hospital? Of course. It was just a mix-up with some clothes, wasn't it? Derek sat down beside me. Emily, seriously, how could you slap Rachel like that over something so minor? Her face is still swollen. What? Who do you think called the ambulance? You fainted from anger, and it was Rachel who got you to the hospital. I tried to sit up abruptly, but Derek reached out to help me, only for me to shove him away. And you just believe whatever she says? Once or twice might be accidents, but 3 or 4 times? How can you still call that unintentional? She's doing all of this on purpose. I overheard her telling her friend she wants to get more money out of us. The allowance and tuition money we gave her. She spent it all on herself. And yet, instead of opening your eyes, the first thing you do when I wake up in the hospital is defend her? Derek, are you her husband or mine?" I was so furious I couldn't contain myself, raising my voice and drawing curious glances from the hallway. What enraged me most wasn't Rachel's petty schemes or her blatant manipulation. It was how obvious her intentions were, and how Derek still couldn't see through her. No, perhaps it's better to say he didn't want to make it obvious. Derek was far from stupid. We had been together for 6 years. He was good-looking, warm, cheerful, and passionate. There was never a shortage of women pursuing him, but he always maintained the proper boundaries, perfectly measured and appropriate. No one had ever made me feel so wronged before. I was wrong, okay? I was wrong. Can you stop shouting? Do you have to make such a scene? It's humiliating. Derek pressed his lips together, lowered his voice, and glared at me as if I were some unreasonable shrew, as if I were the one at fault. In an instant, my heart felt like it had died. A coldness crept into me, spreading throughout my chest. I instinctively pulled my neck into my shoulders. Derek's mouth kept moving, words spilling out, but as I watched him, he felt like a complete stranger to me. "Tell her to leave." I abruptly interrupted him. "What?" I said, "Give her half a day to pack and get out of my house. When I come home tonight, I want the place spotless." I turned my back to him and lay down, refusing to say another word. Derek stared at my back for a long time, sighed, and left. I picked up the ultrasound report lying nearby and gently traced the tiny shadow on it. Tears began to fall uncontrollably, and it felt like someone was carving into my heart with a knife. The child I had longed for, the one I had finally conceived, now left me uncertain whether it was right to keep it. The doctor said it was fortunate that my body was strong. Otherwise, with the stress and physical altercations I had endured at just a month and a half pregnant, the baby would likely not have survived. She reminded me to rest well for the first 3 months, avoid overexertion, and abstain from intimacy. When I returned home, it was already 9 p.m. Rachel had moved out, and the house was much quieter. Yet the cheap perfume she used seemed to linger in the air, refusing to dissipate. In the blink of an eye, 3 months passed. My pregnancy symptoms were severe. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and the mere scent of anything greasy or perfumed made me nauseous. I decided to request a demotion and work from home. I stayed home almost all the time, yet Derek came home less and less. He said that since I had voluntarily stepped back in my career, he needed to work harder to support the family. I knew he was still burdened by the disparity between his family background and mine. Meeting my relatives during holidays only amplified this insecurity, making him overly cautious, afraid of being looked down upon. So when he started working late and attending networking events more frequently after I got pregnant, I let him be. But I never expected that on his birthday, of all days, he'd claim he had to work late. After hanging up the phone, an uneasy feeling gnawed at me. Now, here I sat in a cab parked outside his office building. In the trunk was the birthday cake and gift I had prepared for him, a card containing the money we had saved for a down payment on a house. It was p.m., and I kept my eyes glued to the office entrance, not daring to relax for a second. In the 6 years we'd been together, we had always celebrated his birthday together without fail. Not once had there been an exception. Thinking about everything that had happened over the past few months, I felt a wave of nausea from the tension. Even though I had long suspected this day might come, I still couldn't calm my racing heart. Finally, Derek walked out of the building. p.m., Derek got into his car and started driving. "Follow him," I instructed the driver. The cab driver was steady, trailing Derek for about 20 minutes before he pulled into the parking lot of a university. Half of me had already gone numb. I slumped against the passenger seat as I watched Derek step out of his car with a bouquet of flowers in hand, looking utterly charming as he stood near the campus entrance. About 5 minutes later, a girl in a white dress approached him gracefully. It was Rachel, of course. The moment I saw her, tears streamed down my face. Derek handed her the flowers, then took off his jacket to drape it over her shoulders. Passing students sent them admiring glances, just as they had once done for me. The two of them got into his car. The driver turned to me, asking if I wanted to continue following them. "Follow them," I said, wiping my tears and answering firmly. The car weaved through the streets, finally stopping in front of a hotel. A hotel Derek and I had been to before. "How considerate of you, Derek. You couldn't even let her stay at a cheaper place near the university, could you? You betray me with her, and you tarnish our memories in the process." After enduring 20 agonizing minutes in the cab, I opened the door and walked into the hotel. The receptionist initially refused to reveal the room number, but once I handed over $1,000 for the room fee, my status as the wife looking for her husband became undeniably legitimate. I approached the door to the room and silently listened to the indecent sounds coming from inside. With my phone ready, I knocked hard on the door. "Derek, open the door now." The noises inside stopped abruptly. I wasn't about to give them time to compose themselves. "I know the two of you are in there. There's no point in hiding. I'll count to 3, and if you don't open the door, I'll make sure everyone in the hallway gathers to watch this sordid little show of yours. 3, 2, 1. The door suddenly swung open. Derek, my husband, stood before me hastily wrapped in a bathrobe. Rachel clutched a blanket to her chest, cowering in the corner with a look of terror. In the center of the bed, a vivid stain of blood screamed at me. On the nightstand next to the bed, there was a cake and 2 glasses of red wine. The candles had already been blown out, and the floor was littered with their clothes. "So this is what you call working overtime? Hard at work, huh?" "By the looks of it, Rachel, you've been doing a fine job celebrating Derek's birthday, haven't you? Is this your birthday gift for him?" I sneered, nodding toward the bed. Rachel, clutching the blanket tighter, staggered to her feet. "Emily, don't blame Derek. It's all my fault. I've liked him for a long time. I just wanted to see if my feelings could lead to anything." "You, smack!" I cut her off with a sharp slap across Derek's face. A result? Ha! This is the result of 6 years of being with him. If you want him, you can have him. I stared icily at Derek. "Don't worry, I won't take anything that's not mine, but as for what is mine, don't even think about touching it." With that, I felt a strange calm settle over me. I turned to leave, unwilling to linger a moment longer. Derek grabbed my arm in desperation. "Emily, please don't go. Emily, I made a mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly. It meant nothing, I swear. She's been throwing herself at me, and I never wanted to give her the time of day. You know how persistent she's been. She said she wanted to surprise me for my birthday, and you're pregnant, and you didn't want me touching you. I had a little too much to drink, and then, smack." I struck him again, harder this time. "Do you have no shame? If you at least admitted to it, I could respect your honesty somewhat. I can't believe I ever fell for someone as spineless as you." Derek stood there, stunned, holding his face, his expression a mix of shock and humiliation. "Rachel, can you believe this? The man you've worked so hard to win over is this pathetic. Do you know why?" I turned to Rachel with a cold smile. "Because he's a leech. He lives in my family's house, drives my family's car, and even got his job through my family's connections. Not only is he ungrateful, but he thinks we're humiliating him. That's why he's trying to feel like a man with someone like you. So really, your first time was a waste. You could have sold it to someone better. But alas, one of you lacks vision, and the other is too scheming. In a way, though, you're perfect for each other." With that, I walked away decisively. This time I didn't cry. I left them with nothing but the sight of my back. The memories of 6 years of vows with Derek, the conviction of helping Rachel leave her small town and go to college. Everything shattered into dust in my mind, paving a road I would never look back on. With every step I took, I ground those memories further into the dirt. I went straight home without stopping and devoured my meal as I recounted everything to my parents. Since getting pregnant, I'd never had such a good appetite. My parents, seeing me so calm and even cracking jokes about the situation, were worried sick. My mother's eyes brimmed with tears as she looked at me. I set my utensils down and spoke to them with a steady voice. "Mom, Dad, I'm not as strong as you think I am. Just because I don't show sadness doesn't mean I'm not hurting." 3 months ago, I started noticing something was off. From the way Derek defended Rachel, I knew our relationship was doomed. This whole situation was like a festering wound, only I could feel how much it hurt. I realized back then that the only way for the wound to heal was to let it fester further until it burst. Only once the rot was removed could it begin to mend. That's why I pretended not to notice when Derek's overtime became more frequent and he grew more distant. I wanted to speed up the process. And the worst part? 2 days before his birthday, I smelled Rachel's perfume in his car. So yes, I'm sad. But these 3 months gave me the time to process it and prepare to move on. Good! My father, Henry, finally relaxed his furrowed brow and smiled at me with pride. That's my girl. So, what's your plan now? The next morning, just as my mom and I were about to head out, Margaret called. "Hello, Emily? Derek said you went back to your mom's place. He asked me to talk to you. What's going on?" Women need to be more understanding of men, you know. You're pregnant now and not earning any money, while Derek works so hard every day. You really should be more considerate of him and stop acting like some spoiled little princess. Margaret, I'm your daughter-in-law, not another mother to your son. Saying a pregnant woman should take care of her husband? You dare to say that out loud? I can't even believe you have the nerve. The moment I picked up, I didn't even get a chance to say anything before she started ranting like a supermarket loudspeaker. I interrupted her, clearly annoyed. "Emily, how can you talk to me like that? Don't you have any manners? I'm still someone you call mom, you know. Is this how you speak to me?" "Ha, I must have been blind to call you that before. From now on, I won't. I'm filing for divorce." "Divorce? Why are you divorcing him?" "Oh, Derek didn't tell you. Guess he was too proud of himself. He cheated on me with a college girl I was financially supporting. They even rented a hotel room to celebrate her birthday yesterday, and I caught them red-handed." Margaret was silent for a few seconds, then said proudly, "What man doesn't prefer someone younger? Men get more attractive as they age. If he could marry you before, he can definitely find someone even better now. And besides, you're pregnant and already divorced once. Who would want you? Divorce? Keep dreaming. I suggest you settle down, take care of yourself, and focus on giving birth to a healthy baby boy. If you can't do that, don't be surprised if Derek kicks you out." Margaret was just as unreasonable and overbearing as ever. When Derek and I first got together, she looked down on me, saying I was nothing special despite coming from a wealthy family. According to her, being a good woman meant following the old rules, obeying your husband, raising children, and living a life of submission. During our first year of marriage, she secretly set Derek up on a blind date without telling me. The girl was a civil servant, someone she thought was honest, dependable, and clearly skilled in housework. She even commented on the girl's wide hips, saying they were perfect for bearing sons. When I found their chat history, it took Derek ages to convince me to forgive him. He promised me his mother would never pull something like that again. But little did I know, my tolerance only gave others the courage to keep stepping all over me. Now that I've decided to cut ties, there's no need to sugarcoat things. I smiled and said, "Margaret, let's get one thing straight. The one being abandoned here is your son, not me. Cheating and still acting so righteous about it? No wonder the apple didn't fall far from the tree. You. And stop flaunting those outdated ideas about women needing to obey their husbands. The Victorian era ended a long time ago. Honestly, the way you talk, it's like Derek getting married was some royal coronation. And by the way, your tiny 500 square foot apartment? My dog's kennel is bigger than that. You. All right, I'm done wasting my breath. I have an appointment to terminate this pregnancy. Goodbye. After hanging up, I felt like I'd just taken a cold shower, completely refreshed and invigorated. Finally, I had broken free from this mess. But when I thought about the child growing inside me, I felt a dull ache in my heart. This baby was supposed to come into this world surrounded by love and happiness. All of that had been ruined by them. What's done is done. At least now. I'll make sure it serves its final purpose. The next morning, posters were plastered all over Derek's office floor and Rachel's dorm building. A small crowd gathered beneath them. The posters detailed the entire affair between Derek and Rachel, complete with a deliberately pixelated screenshot from a video. The image showed Derek wrapped in a towel and Rachel clutching a bedsheet, with unmistakable signs of their intimacy scattered across the bed. Even though the image was blurry and cropped, their identities were obvious to many who whispered and speculated. By the time Derek and Rachel arrived to do damage control, it was too late. The entire company and school were buzzing with gossip. Colleagues and classmates alike were talking about how a gold-digging college girl had seduced the husband of her benefactor, hoping to secure her future through him. Little did she know, Derek was only half supported by me and essentially broke. She had schemed so hard to land herself a prince, only to end up with nothing, no money, no man. The school confirmed reports from students who had seen Rachel flaunting expensive items that night. They promptly revoked her financial aid and banned her from receiving any future scholarships due to questionable moral conduct. Furious, Rachel filed a police report, but the authorities found no grounds for legal action. The photos didn't reveal any explicit details. Her face was too distant and blurry, and Derek's was only partially visible. Rachel's parents, who were already against her pursuing higher education, scolded her relentlessly when they found out. With no financial support from me, and no help from Derek, she was left with no choice but to take a leave of absence to figure out how to pay for school. Meanwhile, the scandal caused such a stir that it ruined a major deal Derek had been working on. This deal was practically in the bag, just waiting for the contract to be signed. If it had gone through, the profit share and commission combined would have been more than enough to buy a house outright, let alone cover the down payment. But the client refused to work with them, citing concerns over the partner's poor reputation potentially damaging their image. Derek caused the company a massive loss, and they sued him for tarnishing their reputation. Meanwhile, I wasn't sitting idle. I took pictures of what was left of the baby's things and posted them in the family group chat of Derek's extended family, tagging his parents, Margaret and Henry. I laid out the entire situation in detail and ended with a regretful remark, "It's such a pity my son will have nothing to do with your family anymore." The group chat erupted. Relatives started scolding them one after another. What kind of terrible karma is this? Margaret was so furious she fainted twice. When she finally came to, the first thing she did was call to berate me, "You venomous woman, just you wait. If you want a divorce, I won't give it to you. I'll drag this out for the rest of your life. And this house, the car, everything belongs to us. Don't think you'll get a single cent." I was at a postpartum care center, enjoying a meal of ginseng chicken soup when I heard this. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Old hag, you're like a toad lusting after a swan, ugly and delusional." The court ruling came down. Derek not only lost all his savings, but also the car my dad had gifted him when we got married. On top of that, his parents, Margaret and Henry, had to cough up all their remaining assets too. During the first few days of my postpartum recovery, Derek showed up at my parents' doorstep every day, begging for my forgiveness. My parents were utterly disgusted by him and didn't even want to look at him. They had the housekeeper tell him I wasn't home, so he knelt at the door, saying he would wait for me to return. The security guards couldn't get him to leave. Rain or shine, he knelt there all day, every day, for 2 straight weeks. When my recovery period was over, I couldn't avoid him any longer and agreed to see him. As soon as I stepped out of the car, he crawled over on his knees and clung to my legs, sobbing. "Emily, I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I've been waiting here for half a month. Please, give me another chance. It was all my fault before. You can hit me, scold me, do whatever you want. Just don't divorce me. Please hit me. I deserve to die. I deserve to die." As he spoke, Derek started slapping himself frantically. Within moments, red handprints covered his face. I gave the security guard a look, and he immediately stepped forward to stop Derek. "Sign the divorce papers and I'll even give you some money for travel expenses. Otherwise, don't blame me for not leaving you any dignity." Seeing how determined I was to divorce him, Derek stared at me blankly, crying as he raised his hand to hit himself again. I couldn't be bothered to deal with him anymore and turned to walk into the house, leaving him there alone. With his job lost and his family assets squandered, they finally showed their true colors. The 3 of them moved into a tiny duplex and started making threats. "My son lived here for 3 years. That makes this house marital property, so he's entitled to a share. You and your family ruined us. We've got nothing left to lose, so we'll just stay here. If you don't give us a share, this isn't over." Thankfully, when we got married, my parents insisted I keep the house in my name. The only thing transferred to Derek's name was a $20,000 car. Otherwise, I might have really had to split the house with him. Listening to Margaret's impotent fury over the phone, I was truly amazed. "Old hag, do you think this is your village where you can just mark your territory anywhere you want? Who are you calling a dog? Let me tell you, the house deed has my name on it. Your son won't see a single cent. Instead of wasting your breath, why don't you go back to farming? At least you'd have something to eat." Before she could respond, I hung up and immediately listed the house for sale online. I knocked 5% off the price and made it a condition that the buyer had to deal with the pests inside. The buyer was decisive. After signing the agreement, they showed up unannounced. The 3 of them refused to leave, shouting that it was their home and vowing to stay forever. The buyer simply slapped the deed in their faces and called the police to have them removed. Derek finally signed the divorce papers. Later, a friend told me that after being thrown out, they had nowhere to go and ended up riding a tractor back to their hometown in the middle of the night. When I heard the news, I sent Rachel a message. "Working alone must be tough, huh? I heard Derek's back in the countryside farming. Want me to get his address for you? Maybe I could sponsor you a husband?" The end.